to set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
안녕하세요. 저는 반크의 정희성 연구원입니다. 반크는 전 세계 외국인에게 한국을 알리기 위해 만들어진 사이버 외교사들단이죠. 저도 그중 한 사람이고요. 여러분들의 높은 관심 속에 수많은 한국 오류 정보를 바로잡을 수 있었는데요. 그런데 한국 역사와 관련된 오류 정보들이 여전히 눈에 띄더라고요. 잘못된 정보는 바로 고쳐야겠죠? 지금부터 제가 한국 역사에 대한 제대로 된 정보를 바로 알려드리겠습니다. 고조선에서부터 현재 이르기까지 한국은 5,000년 역사를 이어온 나라입니다. 그 긴 시간 동안 왕조가 바뀌고 나라 이름이 바뀌긴 했지만 한국은 독자적인 문화와 전통을 가진 독립국가였는데요. 1910년 한국은 국권을 상실하고 일제 치하에 들어가게 됐는데요. 한민족은 1919년 3.1운동을 포함해 여러 차례 대규모 독립운동을 전개했습니다. 뿐만 아니라 임시정부 수립, 광복궁 활동 등을 통해 끊임없이 일제에 항거했어요. (1945년 8월 15일) 한국은 해방을 맞이했는데요. 하지만 한국전쟁 이후 한반도는 남북한으로 분단됐어요. 3년간의 전쟁 끝에 1953년 7월 27일 남북한은 정전협정을 맺게 됩니다. 그 후 남한은 경제발전을 거듭해왔고 지금은 세계적으로 한류 열풍을 일으키며 문화 강국으로 우뚝 설 수 있었는데요. 힘들고 어려웠던 시절을 넘어 위기를 극복한 끝에 오늘날 한국은 선진국 계열에 들어설 수 있었답니다. 우리의 역사를 세계에 바로 알리는 일, 문화강국 대한민국의 위상을 더욱 높이는 길입니다. 한국 바로 알리기, 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
Five.
In
Action.
action.
Action!
Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
In Korea
is with its global partners on the sidelines of the Status UN summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Iran's top diplomat briefly returned to Pakistan to reignite negotiations. But U.S. President Donald Trump said talks could be held by phone after calling off plans to send envoys for peace talks. Starting today, the Korean government is rolling out a relief fund to help ease the impact of soaring living costs driven by high oil prices. Worth about $4 billion, the fund will be distributed to around 32 million people in the bottom 70% of income earners in the country. New details about the suspect in Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C. indicate that he sent a note to his family members, saying it was his duty to target Trump administration officials, though he did not name the president directly. We begin this morning with the latest on the conflict in the Middle East. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has returned to Pakistan as Tehran pushes new ceasefire demands through mediation, even as U.S. diplomatic momentum falters. U.S. President Donald Trump has canceled a planned envoy mission citing lack of progress, though indirect talks between the two sides are ongoing. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has returned to Islamabad just one day after a brief visit to Oman, as diplomatic efforts to end the conflict with the United States continue to shift. According to Iranian state media on Sunday, Araghchi met with Sultan Haytham bin Tariq in Muscat before traveling back to Pakistan's capital. There he held talks with senior officials, including Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir. Tehran says this visit is part of ongoing ceasefire negotiations, with Pakistan serving as a key mediator between Iran and the U.S. During the talks, Araghchi is believed to have presented a detailed set of proposals outlining Iran's conditions for ending hostilities. Following his meetings in Islamabad, Araghchi is expected to travel to Moscow for high-level consultations, signaling continued coordination with key regional players. Meanwhile, momentum on the U.S. side appears uncertain. The White House had previously announced plans to send envoys, including Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to Islamabad to build on earlier face-to-face talks. But shortly after Araghchi's departure, President Donald Trump said he had canceled the mission, citing a lack of progress. Speaking to Fox News on Sunday, Donald Trump said the United States would not be sending envoys, signaling a pause in direct diplomatic outreach. He indicated that dialogue remains possible if Iran initiates contact, emphasizing that Washington is open to talks without deploying a delegation, instead stressing that Iran can just call. Despite the setback, indirect communication between the two sides is continuing, according to Pakistani officials familiar with the matter, suggesting that diplomatic channels remain open even as tensions persist. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
So now for a closer look at how the conflict between the United States and Iran could unfold from here, we're joined today by Mohammed Gura, Professor of Middle East Economics at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Gura, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure.
So Trump on Saturday called off plans for two of his top advisors to visit Pakistan, and he indicated the ball is now in Iran's court. He said Washington and Tehran can talk by phone. So how is the U.S. planning to navigate the conflict from here?
Actually, I think U.S. is using maximum pressure with limited diplomacy. So the cancellation of the Pakistan visit, but also keeping the doors open, sends a message to Iran that U.S. is still there, still trying to have some sort of connection with the Iranians and so on. But it would not be easy. It would not be just, they will not accept any deal with the Iranians. So, of course, there are some benefits for the Americans. They are pushing harder and harder Iran. Iran is now in a very bad situation. We have also reports that U.S. has been seizing ships of Iranian oil in the Indian Ocean, also in other parts, and even seizing the ships and moving it to U.S. So I think Iranian economy is really suffering. U.S. is putting more pressure on them, and they are trying to push them in a corner. I think sooner or later, Iranians have to negotiate. They have to reach some sort of consensus with the U.S. because I think the time is not in their favor as much as possible.
Right, and Iran's foreign minister briefly returned to Pakistan for talks despite the absence of these U.S. counterparts. After he visited Oman and Russia, how could peace talks between the two sides still take place in the near future?
Yes, I think it will take place, but it will take time as well. It's not easy. I mean, we know from reports also that it's not easy to reach a consensus even within Iran itself. There are many factions inside the Iranian government right now. We have also reports about Kalibov leaving his post. So there are actually conflicting news from Iran. So, but at the end of the day, it's the economic stress that will move Iran into peace negotiations. And this is what U.S. is hoping for, pushing them further and further in order to negotiate, in order to reach some sort of consensus. We have also some reports talking about Iran seizing oil, seizing uranium enrichment for 20 years. Still, of course, this is not really clear, but we will have to wait and see. However, I think it will take time, more time than we expected, but at the end of the day, some sort of an agreement will be reached sooner or later.
Right, and what's also unclear is who exactly is running Iran right now, as Iran's top negotiator, Mohammad Ghalibaf, has reportedly resigned, and Trump says it's unclear who's running the country. And with a lot of speculation, surrounding the new supreme leader, who exactly holds the decisive power in peace talks right now?
That's an excellent question. Let me tell you that from the perspective of at least economic research, when we are doing political economic research on related to this kind of situations, we have like lots of research that talking about hardliners having advantage in the times of economic stress. Usually we have this idea that when we have more economic pressure, we have more problems and so on. People will try to hang out to their latest defense or the most important defense that they have. Also, hardliners in Iran play a major role when it comes to government control and so on. And hardliners are gaining momentum because they think they are in some sort of a holy war. We cannot downgrade the idea that Iranians have when it comes to martyrdom, when it comes to the culture, the Shia ideas and so on of martyrdom, of fighting infidels or fighting Iran and so on. So this is part of the Iranian personality. We should not look away from this. So I think hardliners are gaining momentum, are gaining advantage, which will make it very hard, of course, to reach a consensus. However, at the end of the day, we will need to reach a consensus because they are suffering right now. They cannot continue with this. But the thing is, we can talk later, perhaps, how will it happen. Even if we reach a consensus, I think the Iranian regime itself or the Iranian government will find it very hard to hold the country in one piece, even after the negotiations. But we will have to wait and see how this develops in the next few weeks.
I see. And in Israel, it launched more strikes on southern Lebanon, despite the ceasefire agreement being extended by 3 weeks recently. So what's next for the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah?
Well, this is I mean, it's an ongoing story. It never ends. This ongoing war, of course. For Israel, we are, I mean, inside the Israeli political situation right now, we can see also lots of moves inside Israel right now when it comes to the political factions and so on. There is a move, there is this pressure on the government in order to finish with this fight with the Hezbollah in order to reach also peace. I wouldn't say peace, but in order to eliminate the danger of Hezbollah. This is one big call inside Israel, from my readings, from my knowledge of Israel's political economy situation. On the other hand, Hezbollah will not be easy about Israel, will not make their life easier. So they're also pushing towards more conflict and so on. The people who are really hurting by this are the Lebanese people, actually. The Lebanese government, when you look at the GDP of Lebanon lost almost 30 to 40% of its GDP because of this conflict. So Lebanese government is trying to push hard in order to also reach a consensus, to reach a deal, to finish with this conflict. But I think it will not be an easy task because we have decades of fights, we have decades of pressure, of conflict, of violence. It will not finish in 1 week. We will have to wait and see, but I think with the international pressure, with the U.S. support, with the international community support, I think some sort of a deal will reach also, considering Hezbollah has no sources of aid coming from Iran anymore. So I think at the end of the day, we will hopefully reach some sort of an agreement when it comes to Israel-Lebanon. But of course, we will have to wait and see how things will develop in the next few weeks.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Gura, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Starting today, the Korean government is distributing its high oil price relief fund worth 6.1 trillion Korean won, or roughly $4.1 billion to cushion the heavy economic blow from rising living costs. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
Korea has begun officially deploying its high oil price relief fund to mitigate the economic impact of soaring living costs. The high oil price relief fund targets around 32.5 million people, making up the lower 70% of income earners. Monday's initial rollout prioritizes the most vulnerable demographics. For basic livelihood recipients, those in the metropolitan area receive 550,000 won, or about $372, while residents in non-metropolitan or depopulated areas receive 600,000 won. Single-parent families and the next lowest income group receive 450,000 and 500,000 won, respectively.
The shock of such crises hits the vulnerable first and most harshly. In times like these, government finances must take the lead and serve as a breakwater to protect the public economy from the waves of crisis.
Others who are eligible will receive their payouts during the second phase, scheduled from May 18th to July 3rd. Payments range from 100,000 won, or roughly $68 for those in the metropolitan area, to up to 250,000 won, or $169, depending on region. Funds distributed via credit cards, check cards, or prepaid cards can be used the following day, while gift certificates picked up in person can be used immediately. To stimulate the local economy, usage of the relief funds is strictly limited. Recipients must spend the money within their registered residential city or county. Spending is also restricted to small businesses with annual sales under 3 billion won, or approximately $2 million, excluding entertainment and gambling establishments. All distributed funds must be used by August 31st. As for foreigners, those registered at the same address as a South Korean national, as well as permanent residents, marriage migrants, and recognized refugees are eligible, provided they are enrolled in the National Health Insurance or Medical Aid programs. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., new details have emerged after shots were fired at the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, with reports that the suspect sent a manifesto to his family before the attack. According to the New York Post, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen outlined his motives and targets, using extreme language to justify the act. While he did not explicitly name President Donald Trump, the statement is being interpreted as targeting the president and senior administration officials. The suspect also apologized to potential victims, saying he did not expect forgiveness. Authorities have not yet verified the document and say the investigation into the motive is ongoing. President Lee Jae-myung has condemned the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, calling it shocking and regrettable. In a social media post on Sunday, he described political violence as a grave threat that undermines the foundation of democracy and can never be justified. He added that the Korean government firmly opposes all forms of violence and extremism that erode democratic values and the rule of law. President Lee also expressed relief that all those present, including U.S. President Donald Trump, were safe and offered his deepest sympathies to the American people. And South Korea is stepping up efforts to tackle one of its most pressing public health challenges, with a new nationwide campaign bringing together government, communities, and public figures. Our Moon Hye-reon files this report.
A message of connection and a reminder that support can come from many places. South Korea's Prime Minister Kim Min-seok on Friday launched the 1,000 Lives Guardian project at Cheonggye Plaza, setting a goal of reducing the number of suicide deaths by 1,000 this year. The initiative focuses on expanding prevention efforts beyond government policy, encouraging wider participation from communities, institutions, and the public. As part of that effort, a group of artists, entertainers, and public figures have been appointed as life ambassadors, using their platforms to share messages of support and awareness. Among them is NCT's To-young, who took to the stage to perform Sandbox, a song from his second solo album intended to serve as a source of energy and support for people struggling through tough times. In his remarks, the Prime Minister emphasized the role of connection in prevention.
I've come to believe that one of the most important ways to address the issue of suicide is to ease and share one another's sense of loneliness.
Here at Cheonggye Plaza, the focus is on making support more visible and more accessible. Officials say efforts like this aim to build a stronger sense of connection, making sure that people know where to turn when they need help.
The campaign also brings in dozens of organizations designated as guardian institutions, each working on tailored programs. Many attendees participated in interactive displays where they were encouraged to share messages of hope and solidarity for others. Among the corporate participants, SK hynix showcased a booth featuring its AI-driven senior care technology, including the AI-friendly counseling center, which utilizes artificial intelligence to provide mental health screenings and emotional support for the elderly. The initiative comes as South Korea continues efforts to bring down its suicide rate, which remains among the highest in the OECD. Organizers say meaningful progress will depend not just on policy, but on sustained attention and participation across society. Moon Hye-reon, Arirang News.
Self-driving cars are becoming more common, but safety remains key. Our Kim Sa-young shows us how a newly developed roadside radar sensor helps detect hidden vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians in poor visibility.
Autonomous vehicles are becoming increasingly more common on roadways, but maximizing their safety may require more than refining vehicle technology alone. Researchers at Rice University in Houston, Texas, led by postdoctoral researcher Jo Gun-woo, have developed a compact roadside radar sensor, IDAR, designed to help self-driving cars detect vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians that may be hidden from a vehicle's onboard sensors at intersections or under poor visibility conditions.
Radar can only detect objects when its signal bounces back to them. But in many real-world situations, signals reflect away instead of returning. And by placing sensors on roadside infrastructure, we can observe the same scene from different angles.
Radar systems send out signals that reflect off objects and return with information. but only a small portion comes back directly, leaving vehicles with an incomplete view of surrounding traffic. IDAR, a low-power millimeter wave radar sensor about the size of an orange, addresses this limitation by capturing reflected signals that would otherwise be lost, enhancing the accuracy of environmental sensing for autonomous systems. The system uses a 3D printed lens to determine the direction of incoming radar signals. In testing, it was able to identify signal direction more than 200 times faster than conventional radar designs. Researchers say the technology shows strong potential, though further validation and development are still needed.
Before deploying on real roads, we need to ensure that the system is reliable, affordable, and scalable, and that it integrates seamlessly with existing vehicles under high mobility. Most importantly, we want to verify that IDAR can detect critical scenarios like pedestrians stepping out from a bus or crashes happening behind the site.
If successfully deployed, it could play a key role in improving the safety and reliability of autonomous driving systems. Kim Seoyoung, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Israel ordered its military on Saturday to strike Hezbollah targets in Lebanon and said Hezbollah had fired targets into northern Israel. Israeli forces struck rocket launchers and facilities used by Hezbollah's elite Radwan units overnight. 4 people were killed in the Israeli strikes. 2 Hezbollah rockets crossed into northern Israel, 1 intercepted with no casualties reported. A Hezbollah lawmaker had declared the ceasefire meaningless just 1 day after President Trump announced its 3-week extension. Mali's Defense Minister Sadio Camara was killed on Saturday when militants attacked his residence near the main army base outside Bamako. The al-Qaeda-linked group Jnim, working alongside a Tuareg rebel faction, hit multiple locations, including near the capital's airport and cities further north, including Mopti, Sawe, and Gao. The militants also claim to have captured the strategic city of Kidal, where Mali's military said operations were still underway. Russian mercenaries supporting the government were reported wounded. The attacks represent a significant setback for the government's Russia-backed security strategy. In the U.S., Kevin Warsh's path to leading the Federal Reserve cleared on Sunday after Republican Senator Tom Tillis said he would no longer block the confirmation. This follows the Justice Department's decision on Friday to drop its criminal probe into current Fed Chair Jerome Powell. With Tillis on board, Senate Republicans now have the votes to advance Warsh's nomination. Jerome Powell's term ends on May 15th, leaving the Senate just weeks to confirm his replacement. Kenya's Sebastian Sawe made history on Sunday at the London Marathon, becoming the first person to run an official marathon in under 2 hours. Sawe finished the race in 1 hour, 59 minutes and 30 seconds. He broke the world record set by the late Kelvin Kiptum in 2023. Second place finisher Yomif Kejelka of Ethiopia also finished under 2 hours, making it the most remarkable men's marathon podium ever. In the women's race, Ethiopia's Tigst Assefa broke her own world record, winning in 2 hours, 15 minutes and 41 seconds.
That early taste of summer is taking a step back across the central regions today. The new week began with sunny skies this morning, but with clouds increasing and rain on the way, temperatures will be closer to where they should be for this time of year for central parts of Korea this week. That rain begins tonight across the capital area and Gangwon-do province, spreading into Chungcheong-do province by early tomorrow morning. morning, with 5 to 20 millimeters in the forecast. But before that rain arrives, dry conditions remain in place across central regions, with dry weather advisory being in place. And as you know, with hiking and camping season in full swing, extra caution with anything that creates a spark is a smart move. Meanwhile, southern regions will stay much warmer with sunnier skies today, topping out at 27 degrees in Daegu, Gyeongju at 25 degrees, but Seoul only makes it to 22 degrees Celsius. But once the rain clears, skies brighten again and pleasant spring weather should return.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
해금은 두 줄로 된 한 악기인데 저도 처음에 시작하게 된 거는 그 두 줄에서 너무 다양한 소리가 나오는 게 너무 신기했고, 일단 해금이 되게 사람의 목소리랑 좀 비슷하다고 많이들 하세요. 줄을 눌러서 이렇게 음을 계속 왔다 갔다 진동하는 그런 형태를 띠고 있다 보니까 애절하다라고 많이 말씀을 해주시는 것 같아요. 이 곡은 제가 좀 오래 좋아했던 친구에 대한 제 여러 감정을 담은 곡인데요. 슬펐던 마음, 혹은 뭐 고마웠던 마음, 이런 여러 가지 감정들을 한데 묶어서 마음이 담긴 곡이라고 할 수 있습니다. 현대적인 음악으로 이제 재구성하는 단계를 거칠 때 항상 중요하게 생각하는 거는 음악의 분위기를 해치지 않는 선에서는 뭔가 전통적인 주법들, 식임새, 이런 전통의 냄새라고 할까요? 맛? 이런 걸 살릴 수 있는 요소들을 좀 집어넣으려고 하는 편이에요. 저는 요새 연주하면서도 스스로가 마음도 편하고 몸도 편안한 음악들, 을 좀 자주 들려드리고 싶다. 제가 음악으로 위로받았던 것처럼 제가 하는 음악들로 여러분들이 좀 위로받을 수 있는 순간이 있었으면 좋겠다. 그런 무대를 만들려고 노력해야겠다라는 생각을 했던 것 같습니다.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, April 27th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Q.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Also, Brooke is with us.
Hello, happy to be here.
Good to have you, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're kicking off a brand new work week, and what better way to shake off the Monday blues than diving into a story that captured the nation's attention. So it's one that had people glued to their phones, refreshing updates, and sharing concerns in real time. And interestingly, it wasn't about politics or the economy, but something far more unexpected. So what animal escape recently had the whole nation on edge, Kyun?
Right. It wasn't about anything about politics or the economy, oil prices, which country seized which ship. It was actually about a 2-year-old male wolf that was born and raised in a zoo called Oworld, located in Daejeon, which is between Chungcheongbuk-do and Chungcheongnam-do province. Now, Nukgu, the name of the male wolf, escaped from the zoo on April 8th and was caught alive after 9 days on the 17th. Local authorities was on the lookout, including many Daejeon citizens, in search for Nukgu, as it wasn't the first time an animal had escaped from this particular zoo. In fact, it caught the whole nation's attention as everyone hoped for the safe capture of the animal. At the same time, it raised awareness and concerns about the safety and poor maintenance of zoos across the nation and whether enough care was given to these caged animals, and also if zoos are absolutely necessary in today's society.
So it is quite remarkable how quickly people rallied around this story. And despite the scare, it's a relief to hear, spoiler alert, that the wolf is safe and recovering well. So it also raises questions about how such incidents are managed. So what changes are being currently discussed to prevent future escapes? Bro?
Well, first, I will say I was pretty surprised to hear about this story because there's CCTV everywhere in Korea. I thought, how could this happen? And I'm not the only one with questions. People are definitely wondering what happened at this zoo that this wolf was able to escape. So according to them, they said that because Nukgu's habitat was a 30,000 3,300 square meter open safari, not a confined animal enclosure. They said it was not very easy to spot him among the other animals roaming there. Additionally, they said that he managed to evade CCTV cameras because he escaped by digging under the fence of the area during the early morning hours, and he exploited blind spots in the surveillance system. Quite a tricky little guy. And the zoo said that they do conduct daily inspections, but they only realized something was wrong after he was already missing, and then they went and they checked the CCTV footage. So people are still kind of waiting to see what the investigation brings about there. After the incident, both the Daejeon mayor and the head of the city corporation issued formal apologies. They acknowledged the concern that this caused for residents, and they promised a full inspection of the zoo to figure out how this happened and what they can do moving forward to prevent it.
That really is one smart wolf. And it also really highlights how even well-intentioned systems can fall short when it comes to managing wild animals, especially in large, more open enclosures. It's not just about how much space is provided, but whether that space can be effectively monitored and secured at all times. And that's why we're going to talk more about this. But first, let's take a look at the screen.
The escape of a 2-year-old wolf sparked a local panic and launched a massive search effort. The story quickly drew attention not only across the country but around the world as concerns grew over whether the animal would be safely captured. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at why this particular case resonates so strongly with younger generations, how it reignited concerns over repeated animal escape incidents, and how it's now fueling broader debate over the state of zoos and animal welfare.
Just as we saw in the video, what started as a local incident quickly turned into something much bigger. So this wasn't just about an escaped animal. It became a story people felt personally invested in it, especially a certain age group. So why did this case resonate so strong, especially with the younger generations, Kim?
The escape of Nuku grew widespread public attention to the point of getting the nickname the National Wolf, and it inspired many countless memes from the younger generation. Now, during the search, crowds of citizens gathered at the scene hoping to catch a glimpse of him, and some even actively joined efforts to find him in order to prevent him from being shot or dying, as he had apparently no experience of living in the wild. And experts were saying time was ticking, saying that the golden time had almost passed, but luckily he was captured alive, and he's actually, doing quite well, being returned to the order. Now, even a tracking tool app called Where Are You Going, Nuku Map was even launched by a citizen to help locate Nuku. Even after he was captured 9 days later, public interest actually continued, and people displayed messages for Nuku on electric billboards, and there were even movements to create related merchandise. Even some citizens concerned about his well-being after his capture requested live video updates and even live streaming from the zoo, not just being provided with photographs. They actually wanted to see him, how well he was doing, whether he was really adopting well back in his home. But I think from what I read, he's actually doing well, and experts are even saying that he's coping well after coming back.
Hearing all of this makes me think maybe this was part of his big plan. He's literally now on the map. Just put him on the map.
Yeah, it's a smart little,
He really is.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating how this went beyond simple curiosity and turned into active participation, even in fandom-like behavior. But that level of attention also seemed to come from a deeper emotional place. So what explains the strong sympathy people felt toward the wolf, Brooke?
Well, I think we all just naturally have that compassion toward animals. Even talking to our hair and makeup team this morning about this topic, we were all just kind of clutching our chests and talking about how cute he was and how concerned we were. And I think that concern came from, like you mentioned, there could have been predators out there. He could have not survived in the wild. Everyone was very, very worried about this little guy. And a lot of people also felt seeing these images that, animals are meant to be out in the wild. They're not meant to be confined in a zoo. So it kind of sparked a lot of controversy in that front as well. But in this case, thankfully, the search did not end in a sad outcome. We did get to see him get a safe return, which is wonderful. I think another reason why this case resonated so much is that Nukku, he's not just any wolf. He's quite special because he's part of a restoration effort for the Korean wolf, a species that is now considered virtually extinct in the wild. So I think people weren't just worried about this one animal, but also what he represents. He's kind of a symbol for conservation and biodiversity. And so it was more people being very worried about the dreams and the hopes that they had for this effort. Also, the scale of the search, like we've been seeing in the footage on screen, oh my gosh, there's drones and thermal equipment. I mean, people went all out. There were hundreds of personnel, police, firefighters, and citizens themselves. Like we said, people made applications for the purpose of trying to find this wolf. So I think just the sheer scale of the search for him really made people feel more connected to the story.
Right, so that emotional response is quite telling, and it also points to a bigger pattern. And that's because this wasn't an isolated case. So how are repeated animal escape incidents actually becoming a growing concern, Kim?
Now, I am sure that many people, including all of us, remember the escape of a zebra named Tero back in 2023 at the Children's Grand Park. Yes. That is actually located very close to Seongsu-dong, which many of their international viewers actually know. Yeah, as you see on the screen right now, you see Tero roaming around in the streets.
Impossible to forget these images.
Yeah, so when I first saw this, it went viral almost like in real time through social media. And I actually thought it was like an AI-generated video or even like watching like animation in real life. And the picture that was taken of Sero actually staring at a delivery man in his motorbike in the alleyway, I think it's that alleyway. Like I said, everyone thought it was like a deep fake, or it was so surreal.
Such a big meme as well.
Exactly, it became a huge meme as well. But this incident too was caused by poor management on the part of the zoo and an artificial living environment they actually created for Sero, which did not suit Sero's natural behavior and surroundings. So it raised more concerns of the lack of care given to animals, locked up in zoos where everything seemed artificial. But since this incident, many doctors actually painted other zebras on the wall of where Sero lived, and that helped him to actually overcome his traumas of losing his family, I think, parents. So there have been efforts, but I think this raises more, the recent incident of Nukku escaping raises more issues about zoos taking enough care of these animals.
And when you look back at this case as well, and there's also been several high-profile cases that have raised similar concerns about safety and management. So what are some other cases that sparked similar controversy?
Well, in fact, citizens and animal groups were calling for capture alive, don't kill in the case of Nukku, in part due to previous cases. For example, in 2018, there was a puma named Borongi who escaped from O-World, the very same place that we're talking about today. And at the time, the puma slipped out while a keeper had left a door open and was unfortunately killed 4 hours and 30 minutes after that escape. Then again, in 2023, a 20-year-old lioness named Sasuni was shot dead after escaping from a private tourist farm, killed within just about an hour, and apparently that animal did not show signs of aggression, so people were very upset about it, saying, was that lethal force really necessary? And it made people, I think, a lot more concerned in the case of Nukku as well, that perhaps it would end up in the same outcome. But again, as we've been saying, fortunately, he is back and recovering well. But these repeated incidents do raise bigger questions about zoo environments in general, which I believe we're going to get into now.
And as these incidents stack up, and there's quite a number of them, they're no longer seen as one-off accidents, but signs of a deeper issue. So what broader concerns about zoos themselves are, in this case, bringing up?
That's a good question. As most animal escape incidents have been caused by inadequate care and environments that fail to consider the animals' needs, criticism of zoos in general have been growing. There have been questions raised on the lack of animal caregivers, in numbers compared to the total number of animals that need to be taken care of. In fact, 74% of Korean adults responded that current zoo practices need to change. In particular, if you take a look at the screen, compared to older generation who are more accustomed to the traditional exhibition-style zoos, the MZ generation, the younger generation, who tend to place greater importance on animal welfare and animal rights, showed a significantly lower rate of believing that modern zoos provide educational value to children. Less than 3% of adults in their 20s said zoos have any sort of educational effect on children, and around 6% of adults in their 30s said yes to educational benefits, while over 30% of adults in their 50s said it does, showing a stark contrast among the younger and older age groups when they think about zoos and educational benefits to children.
That's quite interesting. And also, this debate isn't just limited to Korea. Similar conversations have been happening globally as well. So how are other countries addressing animal welfare in zoos, Brooke?
Well, in the United States, we have something called the AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums that sets and enforces strict standards in order to protect animal welfare. The accreditation process for the AZA is actually quite rigorous. It evaluates everything from animal welfare and conservation to safety and ethics, and zoos have to be reevaluated regularly in order to maintain that status. So that is a good thing. I will also say that I think public perception really puts the pressure on to make sure that zoos are operating in a safe way. For example, the documentary Blackfish really changed a lot of things in this industry. It exposed the treatment of captive orcas, and it shifted public perception not just on marine environments, but zoos in general and how we are treating these animals that are in captivity. A few years later, we had Tiger King. It was a very viral TV series, and it drew attention to the poor conditions in these private and small-scale zoos that are not accredited by the AZA. So there need to be efforts to make sure that there aren't any oversights and zoos that are operating without accreditation because the animals there need our help. So even though efforts are happening, there's still a lot to be improved, I would think. So it's important for us to have discussions like these.
So while awareness has improved, the gap between standards and reality still remains, leaving plenty of room for further discussion how animals should be cared for moving forward. And that's why we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, should zoos be abolished? And here's what the results showed. So about 79% said zoos should improve conditions rather than be abolished, while 13% supported abolishing zoos altogether for animal rights reasons. A smaller 6% believe zoos are fine as they are, and 2% said they were not sure. So it's quite telling that nearly 8 in 10 people aren't calling for zoos to disappear, but to do better. And that suggests the debate isn't so much about whether zoos should exist, but about how they operate and whether they can meet rising expectations around animal welfare. So to gain a deeper perspective, we're going to be joined by a researcher from an animal welfare advocacy group. And that conversation is coming up right after break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Park Chuna, who is a senior researcher at the Animal Welfare Advocacy Research and Education here in Korea. So hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So Chuna, why do zoo animal escapes keep happening these days?
So animal escapes from zoos are a structural problem related to poor safety management. So when animals leave their enclosure, it generally means that maintenance, monitoring system, or the enclosure design was not adequate. So when we remember the Daejeon Award, they previously experienced a serious escape incidents in 2018 when the puma got escaped and was shot dead. At that time, there were many problems revealed, such as unlocked gate, failure to follow safety protocols. Fortunately, in this recent incident, the animal was safely recovered. However, the fact that similar problems continue to occur, it shows that the issue of poor animal management in zoos must be addressed more seriously and more systematically. And in this case, the wolf escaped by digging under the enclosure fence. When we think of the animal behavior for the wolves, they naturally dig. It's a very common behavior. So if the enclosure is not designed with this in mind, escape becomes possible. So when designing enclosure for the captive wildlife, it is vital to understand animals' ecology and behavior, because all animals have their specific species-specific behavior patterns.
Thank you. What realistic solutions exist beyond just closing zoos in general?
So beyond closing the zoos, there are realistic steps that could significantly improve safety for both animals and people. One fundamental rule in zoo operation is the two-person working principle. So when staff members enter animal areas or perform animal care tasks, at least two people should work together, because if one person makes a mistake or misses something, at least one other staff member can respond quickly. Because animals in zoos, they are entirely dependent on human management. Human mistakes can easily lead to dangerous situations. So that is why adequate staffing is essential. However, in many zoos, this very basic principle is not consistently followed. And one major reason is the shortage of staff. They don't have enough zookeepers or veterinarians. So it makes it difficult to maintain proper safety procedures. And in addition to staffing issues, of course, many zoo facilities have, they really have to make improvements for the enclosures environment. While conditions vary between zoos and zoos in South Korea, a significant number of facilities still operate with outdated design, outdated environment, or inadequate enclosures and safety systems. So addressing these issues would be important to make steps toward preventing future incidents.
Some very good points there. Thank you so much for your insights today. We have one last question for you. What changes by policymakers and the public could best improve animal welfare?
So to give you the background, in Korea, there are about 120 zoos across the country, and except for 26 public zoos, most are privately operated zoos. And unfortunately, many facilities still have poor conditions, and animal welfare is often compromised because the environments in management, they do not adequately consider animals' species needs. And also in many zoos, they run close contact programs, if you have heard of them. So close contact, which means touching or feeding the animals, and it's for commercial attractions. And these so-called zoo encounter programs raise serious welfare concerns because they prioritize entertainment for the visitors rather than the well-being of the animals. So government really needs to introduce stronger regulations on these human activities that harm animal welfare. And another important issue is that there are illegal wildlife exhibition facilities still operating in Korea. Although since there was a legal revision in 2022, that facilities that exhibit wild animals, they must require permission. However, some facilities continue to operate without having permission. So to ensure that this law works as intended, the government needs to strengthen enforcement against facilities that operate outside this legal framework. And lastly, regarding what public could do, it was notable that public showed strong concern about the safety and well-being of Nukgu. However, there is also a need to be cautious about what could be called a Nukgu syndrome, where animals are viewed through a very human-centered lenses. So to consider animal welfare, we really need to look at animals from their own perspective and what they're experiencing, what's their needs with their own species-specific behavior and stuff. And we really need to ask whether they are living their life worth living in the environments they are placed in. So I think fundamentally we really need to consider that animals are thriving in their life rather than just surviving. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, Chinoa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just heard from a researcher about why zoo animal escapes keep happening, what realistic solutions exist beyond closing zoos, and what changes by policymakers and the public could best improve animal welfare. So it's clear this conversation goes beyond one incident and reflects a broader shift in how we view animals in captivity. So how has this case, and I guess today's discussion, changed how you think about the role of zoos?
I think it really comes down to priority. If it's just for entertainment purposes, obviously we're heading in the wrong track. We're just focused too much on human activity, what we enjoy more. But like how our researcher just mentioned, if we think from the animal's perspective, they have their own needs, they have their own adequate environment, and in order to raise the awareness of animal welfare, we need to think from their side and what is right for them, what they actually need to survive. So finding that right balance I think is really important, and the government really needs to step in, and relevant ministries to set up proper rules and regulations so that everyone can kind of survive, coexist in today's world.
Right, for me too, I think that stood out the most, importance of looking at from the animal's perspective, especially because there's such a fan culture around animals that are coming up. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have a cat and I've had pets my whole life, so I have a lot of love for animals. This topic is near and dear to my heart. So I hope that discussions like these can put a real spotlight on animal welfare and ensure that zoos are not just here for people's entertainment, because we need to not think about things from the human-centered approach. Like our guest said, we need to think about the animals. Zoos should be here for the conservation and protection of animals, and that's it. That's my opinion on it. So I hope that people continue to put pressure on and make sure that our animals are protected and safe.
So what started as a single escape has now sparked a much bigger conversation. So it's clear the question is no longer whether zoos should exist, but how they should evolve. And ultimately, that may depend on how we choose to balance safety, ethics, and responsibility moving forward. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Q.
It's always a pleasure.
And also Brooke.
Thank you for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully your next zoo visit will be about learning and not looking for a missing animal. We are
News Generation.
네, 안녕하세요. 시대의 마음을 캐는 마인드 손민령입니다. 아리랑 TV 30주년 말씀드렸을 때 너무 놀랐어요. 아, 벌써 그렇게 됐구나 라는 생각이 들었고, 그 사이에 우리가 알고 있는 K가 엄청난 규모로 더 확장되고 있죠. 지금 작년 8월부터 제가 본 데이터 속에서 코리아 트래블이라는 그런 검색어가 굉장히 빠르게 올라가는 걸 확인할 수 있었거든요. 이제 드디어 우리가 뿌렸던 씨앗들이 엄청난 규모로 다가오고 있는 것 같습니다. 그 전체의 흐름 속에서 아리랑 TV가 해오셨던 일들이 굉장히 큰 인풋이 되었다는 것은 달리 말할 수 없을 정도로 우리 모두 알고 있죠. 지금까지 해오셨던 일들이